All right, what we're going to do for the last demonstration here of switching circuits, we are going to control two green lights from two different locations. So we're going to use two different three-way switches to represent two locations to control two green lights simultaneously. Then we're going to control two red lights simultaneously from three different locations, while blue light remains constantly on all the time, just to simulate, for example, a receptacle or a plug in a wall. So the blue light will stay on regardless of the switching of the other lighting. Two reds simultaneously will energize and de-energize from three different locations, and two green lights simultaneously energize and de-energize from two different locations. And I'm going to start connecting them right from scratch here. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to make a connection of bond from our power supply, and we are just going to, I'm going to make a connection of bond between all of our equipment just to ensure safety, which is something that you will do out in the field. Your code book dictates that typically all your electrical equipment must have a bonded path all the way back to your ground connection. Okay, so that's just what I'm doing here right now. Plus, I'm trying to make the wiring system look as beautifully decorated and confusing as possible here. I just want to do this one step at a time so you can follow right along and understand what we're doing here. So I've just bonded all my equipment here by using the green bond wires here. Okay, I'm going to start by with our blue light, where the blue light will be constantly on all the time. So what I'm going to do from my power supply here at the bench, I'm going to connect my live conductor. So again, when you're starting with your schematic drawing, this will be the vertical line on the left hand side. I'm going to supply power to the black terminal of my blue light. And then I'm going to have a return wire coming back, which is my identified, back to my bench. And that will keep my light constantly on. There is no means of control to energize and de-energize the blue light here, for example. And that's what our intent is. The next thing we want to do is to deal with our two red lights and have them control from three different locations. Right. So what we will do, first of all, we will take a power wire from our power supply, and we will go and feed the common of our first three-way switch just long enough. Okay. And then what we will do is we will take the travelers, or the two outputs of our three-way, and connect into the two input of our four-way. And I'm just gonna use different color wires here. So one output of our three-way will go to an input of our four-way, and we'll use blue as the other pathway, output of three-way, input of four-way. Okay. Then what we will do is we will go out of the four-way switch, output to the input of one of our three-way inputs, and the other output of our four-way switch will go to other input of our three-way switch. And then we will have the common of our three-way switch here will be connected to each one of our two lights in parallel. So I'm going to go to red light, parallel connect first red light to second red light, and basically this represents my switch leg to each one of my two red lights. The common of my three-way, this is a switch leg, and basically I'm feeding from here to both of my two red lights switch legs. Then the last part will be the identified conductor of each one of these two red lights. I've jumpered them together, which completes my parallel, but then I still have to connect the identified back to power supply. And that's what that has done right there. Okay. Now, with new code rules, we have to also make a connection of identified in each one of our switch locations. So I'm just going to grab some more white wires here, and we will make a identified connection to each one of our three switches. As per 2018 CEC. Perfect. So we're done. So now what I've got done here with all the beautifully colored wires, I now have two red lights switched from three locations. Perfect. Now the last thing we need to do is to have these two green lights come on simultaneously from two different locations. So first thing we're going to do is come from power supply a third time, and we will connect to the common of our first three-way switch. And I'm just going to tighten things up here just so I have enough conductor length, just a little bit more. Oops. So I'm making a power connection, power supply. This would be the common terminal of our first three-way switch. Okay. Then from there, I'm going to connect the output of my first three-way to my second three-way input. Then other output of first three-way to input of second three-way. So this will represent our travelers here, and actually between our three-way, four-way, three-way switching, the red and the blue wires way back here, when I connected them, they will represent here, for example, our traveler wires. So where you see red and blue, that represents our travelers. Okay, then we will connect from our second three-way switch and connect to each one of our lights from the common terminal of our three-way switch. We will connect to each one of our two lights that we want to energize simultaneously. And again, this would represent our switch leg. This common of our three-way here is now a switch leg to both of our green lights. That is my switch leg. Blue and red would be my travelers, and this black one here is my live power wire to the other, the common of my first three-way switch. Okay. And then of course we need to make a connection to identified from each one of our two lights. I'm going to jumper them, which completes my paralleling of my two green lights, and then make a connection of identified all the way back to power supply. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, again, as per CEC, make a connection, have a terminal connection of identified at each one of our switches. That's one. And this one here would be 2. Just like magic. Now, doesn't that look gorgeous? just a couple of wires, but keep in mind that what we actually have going on here is we have the blue light is representing a receptacle being energized all the time, and this is all on one circuit here. We have perhaps a long hallway where we need to have 3 different locations to control 2 lights, and then maybe as a stairwell having 2 switches, 2 locations here and here controlling 2 green lights. All right, so we're going to energize this and validate its function. Okay, so we'll energize this. I'm just going to turn my red lights off. So my blue light is on, indicating this should be on all the time, regardless of how the switching is happening between reds and greens. Okay, I'm going to start with my 2 locations of switching my 2 green lights. This should turn my lights on here. Sorry, energize, de-energize, energize, de-energize, energize, de-energize, energize, de-energize. So far we're good. 2 locations. These lights switch, energize and de-energize, while the blue one stayed energized all the time. Great. Now we're going to go to the other setup here where we have 3 locations switching 2 lights simultaneously. So now I want to be able to energize, de-energize, energize,